Diddy, Biggie, The Confessional, Part 3. Biggie and Tupac. Biggie and Tupac.
2Pac Shakur is a music legend. And for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step.
The courtroom pulsed with a charged silence as Sean Diddy Combs, once the untouchable mastermind behind Bad Boy Entertainment, sat composed at the defense table, flanked by a wall of attorneys. His immaculate suit and unshaken poise felt almost defiant, a stark contrast to the weight of what loomed before him. But the cracks in his empire were no longer hidden. They were widening, and fast. This wasn't just another high-profile scandal. It was a reckoning, a moment that threatened to rip the veil off decades of secrets buried deep in the glamorous yet ruthless heart of the hip-hop world. And in the eye of the storm stood Keefe D. Davis, a name that once lingered in the shadows of the genre's darkest rumors, now dragged into the searing glare of public exposure.
Only man currently facing charges in the case, Keefe D. Davis, claims that Sean Combs, also known as Diddy, paid for a hit on Tupac.
Keefe D wasn't just another name on a witness list. He wasn't chasing headlines or clout. He was a survivor of an era soaked in violence, loyalty, and silence. A relic of the streets, forged in the fire of the 1990s hip-hop wars, where legends rose and lives were lost. For years, his name lingered in shadows, spoken in hushed tones behind closed doors, alluded to in coded interviews, woven into the fabric of whispered conspiracies. He was more myth than man, but now the myth had a voice, and that voice belonged to the prosecution. Keefe D's testimony wasn't just a narrative, it was a fuse, one that, once lit, threatened to detonate the legacy of a titan and rewrite the history of one of music's most notorious nights.
Named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to 2Pac's.
The heart of the trial pulsed around one fateful night, September 7th, 1996. The night 2Pac Shakur was gunned down in a drive-by on the glittering stretch of the Las Vegas Strip. For decades, the murder remained a haunting mystery, a brutal symbol of the blood-soaked rivalry that once split the East and West coasts. But the prosecution had a different story to tell. This wasn't random. It wasn't chaos spilling into the streets. According to them, it was deliberate. A meticulously planned execution, born not in back alleys, but in boardrooms and studios, orchestrated by power players masked in fame. Through Keefe D's eyes, the courtroom glimpsed a world where betrayal wore designer suits, desperation moved in silence, and everything. Loyalty, silence, even lives had a price. A world where power didn't just rule, it killed.
The centerpiece of a lot of what happened during direct testimony were freak-offs. And what the prosecution tried to show was that he forced and or coerced her into doing these freak-offs. And we've talked about this earlier this week, that at least my opinion is that in a lot of these, the prosecution just didn't close the loop. It was something she felt.
According to Keefe D, the events of that deadly night in Las Vegas didn't begin on the Strip. They started months earlier, woven into a tapestry of ego, ambition, and rising tension. The East Coast-West Coast feud wasn't just a media-fueled spectacle. It was a dangerous game of pride and power, escalating with every diss track, every public slight, every whispered threat. At the center stood two giants, 2Pac Shakur, the raw, unfiltered fury of Death Row Records, and Sean Diddy Combs, the sleek, calculated force behind Bad Boy Entertainment. The powder keg ignited with Shakur's explosive diss track, a lyrical assault that didn't just criticize, it obliterated. It cut deep, publicly and personally. According to Keefe D, that track was the breaking point. In gripping detail, he described a meeting that, if true, shifted the course of hip-hop history. Behind closed doors, away from the cameras and flashing lights, Diddy allegedly made an offer, a bounty on Tupac's life. The exact sum? Disputed. The message? Unmistakable. Tupac had to go. This wasn't about revenge, Keefe D claimed. It was strategy. Tupac's influence was spreading fast. His attacks on Bad Boy were relentless, and his alliance with Suge Knight only sharpened the threat. To Diddy, Keefe D said, removing Tupac wasn't just an option, it was survival.
Like two children in grade school that just hit it off and just hung out with each other all the time.
This wasn't just a tale of two stars locked in a public feud. It was a saga of quiet deals, shadowy alliances, and decisions made far from the cameras. The prosecution painted a chilling portrait, one where power wasn't just performed on stage, but wielded behind the scenes with precision. They argued that Diddy's alleged involvement wasn't a one-time impulse, but part of a pattern, a calculated use of wealth and reach to silence, sway, and when needed, eliminate. Years of investigations fed their case, from Keefe D's past confessions to damning testimony from those once trusted within Diddy's inner circle. But Keefe D wasn't just another witness, he was the embodiment of an underworld the public only glimpsed in blurred headlines and half-told stories. A living bridge to the truths most chose to ignore. The defense came out swinging. They tore into Keefe D's credibility, highlighting a criminal past thick with deception. Deal struck. For immunity and a taste for the spotlight. They claimed he was rewriting history, using the courtroom as his stage, spinning tales to serve his own ends. Yet the prosecution responded with details too vivid to dismiss. Accounts of the car that crept up beside 2Pac's that night, the flash of motives that burned beneath the surface, and the cold, calculated purpose that drove the men inside.
For what's trending in true crime, nearly 30 years after the death of legendary rapper 2Pac Shakur, the man accused of his murder is now claiming that Sean Diddy Combs once ordered a hit on the rap icon. In a recent court filing, a 2009 interview between police and Dwayne Keefe D. Davis is making headlines yet again.
Keefe D's testimony stretched beyond the gunfire on the Las Vegas Strip. It became a window into an era, a volatile culture where business and personal vendettas collided, where loyalty was a transaction, and where the hunger for power left destruction in its wake. The courtroom was drawn into the chaos that led up to that night, starting with the now infamous casino brawl. A fight that wasn't just a random outbreak of violence, it was a spark. Shakur, fiery and fearless, was said to be at the center of it, trading blows with members of the Southside Crips, including Keefe D's own nephew, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. What followed, according to the testimony, wasn't just retaliation, it was the fallout of a culture built on pride, hierarchy, and the deadly weight of reputation.
It may be some truth to it. But this dude is raping grown men? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we can laugh at it, but, you know, it sounds like it's true. I'm looking at it right now, and Diddy, he did go to prison, and he offered the inmate $2.3 million to settle the case, so.
They listened as Keefe D recounted the ride that would change music history, the moment he and his crew spotted 2Pac's BMW gliding through the Las Vegas night. What happened next, he said, was a split-second decision, but its consequences would echo for decades. Yet the trial was never just about that moment. It reached far deeper, into the years of murmurs and unspoken truths that had clung to Diddy and the empire he built. The prosecution peeled back the layers, revealing a web of alleged payoffs, cover-ups, and silent threats. A portrait emerged, not just of a mogul, but of a man willing to do whatever it took to keep his kingdom intact. They pointed to past lawsuits quietly settled, accusations from former allies turned enemies, and a steady stream of circumstantial evidence that suggested something more than coincidence. This wasn't just about 2Pac. It was about the shadows behind the spotlight and the lives caught in the crossfire of ambition. Outside the courtroom, the world watched in stunned silence. For some, Keefe D's words were the final puzzle piece, confirmation of long-held suspicions. For others, it felt like too much, too twisted, too calculated to be real. But regardless of which side you stood on, one truth was undeniable. The trial was ripping apart the myth. It was dismantling the polished illusion of a figure once seen as untouchable. And beneath the glitz and power lay a world where silence was currency and influence came at a devastating cost.
Right now, Davis is fighting for bail ahead of his murder trial, which he has pleaded not guilty for.
Right now, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis is fighting for bail as he awaits trial for a murder he insists he didn't commit. But in that courtroom, the stakes have grown far beyond a single charge. This isn't just about justice for 2Pac Shakur. It's about the soul of a culture, the legacy of a movement, and the dark truths buried beneath the surface of one of music's most powerful empires. The trial is still unfolding, but the questions it raises are growing louder. What secrets remain hidden? How far would the powerful go to bury them? And was the East Coast-West Coast feud a genuine war? Or something more calculated, more useful to the media, the authorities, and the men pulling the strings? Keefe D claimed it was never a drive-by, that the official narrative, the one fed to headlines and echoed in documentaries, was a mask. The truth, he hinted, was messier, more personal, and far more deliberate. But the chaos now surrounding Sean Diddy, Combs didn't start in that courtroom. The trial might be the spark, but the fractures in his carefully constructed persona have been spreading for years. This isn't just about a night on the Las Vegas Strip. It's about the rise of an empire and the trail of destruction left in its path. The bodies, both literal and symbolic. The lives broken in the name of control. The prosecution didn't stop with Keefe D's testimony. They kept digging, pulling at the threads that tied it all together. And what emerged was a chilling narrative. A man who didn't just survive in a ruthless industry, but mastered it through control, manipulation, and fear. At the heart of it all was the East Coast-West Coast feud. For decades, fans questioned whether it was ever truly organic. Now, with Diddy on trial, the speculation is turning into something far more concrete. Perhaps it wasn't just a rivalry, it was a strategy. A war crafted not in studios, but behind closed doors. And the truth, long buried beneath bravado and beats, may finally be clawing its way to the surface.
So why do you think they tied Diddy name to it?
Because it makes the East Coast and West Coast war works for the authorities and for the news media. Didn't no cops do that. It was an East Coast, West Coast war, and it was a drive-by shooting. It was never no damn drive-by shooting.
The feud between Death Row and Bad Boy wasn't just a battle of lyrics. It was a deadly chess game with stakes that went far beyond the studio. Diss tracks weren't mere songs. They were battle cries. Music videos became veiled threats. Every calculated move aimed to wound, embarrass, and shake the foundation of the other camp. While fans watched it unfold as spectacle and entertainment, those inside the scene understood the brutal reality beneath the surface. This wasn't just about bragging rights. It was a war for survival. The trial peeled back the curtain to reveal something far more sinister. Diddy's alleged role in 2Pac's downfall wasn't fueled by personal grudges alone. It was a cold, calculated strategy, a ruthless bid to cement his throne at the summit of the music world. And if that meant removing a rival who had grown too powerful, too threatening, then nothing was off the table.
They gotta come up with some kind of evidence, and they gotta have Keefe D say and point to some kind of evidence, which I don't think he could, that Diddy put out the hit on 2Pac. Yeah, they gonna press him.
The trial took a darker turn when court documents exposed that Diddy's battle wasn't confined to rival artists alone. Witnesses unveiled a shadowy network of enforcers, an unseen force working tirelessly behind the scenes to demand loyalty and silence any dissent. One former insider described Diddy's inner circle not as friends, but as a well-oiled machine, executing orders without question, no matter how ruthless. The prosecution laid out chilling accusations of intimidation that crossed every line far beyond veiled threats. Rival executives and journalists alike had allegedly been targeted, some receiving anonymous warnings after publishing stories that cast a shadow on Diddy or for siding with death row artists. Adding fuel to the fire, the courtroom saw surveillance, footage from industry events. The prosecution claimed these clips revealed Diddy's team closely tracking key death row figures. One grainy video showed members of Diddy's entourage following Suge Knight and Shocker at a Los Angeles nightclub, mere weeks before the shooting in Vegas. The defense dismissed it all as coincidence. But the prosecution argued it was part of a calculated campaign, a strategic effort to gather intelligence and stay steps ahead in a ruthless game. Though these claims were tough to verify, they painted a stark image. A man who wasn't just reacting to the chaos, but meticulously orchestrating the most explosive moments of the feud.
Feds, Al Capone style, have not charged everything under the sun. They've charged 3 main charges: racketeering, sex trafficking, and the transport of And I'll tell you, I don't know about the racketeering charge. It's pretty sweeping. And I'll tell you what the general what the general elements are.
Perhaps the most unsettling testimony came from a former bad boy employee who recalled attending one of Diddy's opulent parties and overhearing a conversation that hinted at how problems with rivals were handled behind closed doors. Though the words were carefully cloaked, the message was clear. In Diddy's world, the feud wasn't just a clash. It was a ruthless contest with only one survivor. This testimony deepened the prosecution's case, suggesting that the violence of 1996 wasn't the chaotic fallout of a bitter rivalry, but the final act in a meticulously orchestrated plan. Whether the jury accepted these claims or not, one truth emerged unmistakably. This trial was peeling back the curtain on the extreme lengths power brokers in the industry would go to safeguard their reign. The prosecution laid bare a narrative of control masked by glamour, where Diddy's ascent wasn't fueled solely by hits and lavish parties, but by an iron grip on the industry. Former insiders, some speaking in whispers and under the shield of anonymity, painted a portrait of a man who brooked no opposition. Whispers of payoffs, threats, and constant surveillance echoed through their accounts. One witness described being approached by someone from Diddy's camp with a blunt warning, a clear message to toe the line if they wanted to survive in the business. Though these tales remained unproven, they added undeniable weight to the case that Diddy's reach extended far beyond music, shaping an empire built on fear as much as fame.
When the whole East-West thing started, we were caught off guard, and that broke my man's heart.
This was never just about rivalry, it was a battle for survival. The trial dug deep into the financial stakes behind the feud, revealing just how much was on the line for both Death Row Records and Bad Boy Entertainment. These weren't mere record labels, they were sprawling empires, each holding millions in power and profit. One wrong move could shatter everything, turn dominance into oblivion. And in the ruthless world of 1990s hip-hop, dominance wasn't measured by chart rankings alone. It was about respect. Losing it wasn't just embarrassing, it was downright dangerous. For Diddy, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The prosecution argued this pressure drove his choices, painting a picture of a man willing to cross any line to stay on top. But the courtroom was only one stage. Outside those walls, the trial reignited harsh conversations about the darker realities of the music industry. Fans, journalists, and insiders alike were forced to face a brutal truth. The world they revered was often built on fear, exploitation, and control. The East Coast-West Coast feud was just the most visible fracture in a much larger, more troubling landscape. The trial exposed a culture where power wasn't just earned, it was wielded like a weapon. And those who paid the highest price were often the ones with the least to lose. Beyond the headlines and drama, the trial revealed the personal toll of these battles. While 2Pac's name took center stage, the shockwaves from that night in '96 rippled far and wide, leaving families to grapple with grief and trauma that no fame or fortune could ever heal.
The question is he a criminal? Is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
For Afeni Shakur, the trial reopened wounds that time had never fully healed, a raw reminder of the son she lost too soon. For Biggie's family, it offered a haunting window into the ruthless world that had stolen their loved one. And for the countless others trapped in the feud's deadly crossfire, it was a sobering testament to a harsh truth. The price of fame often comes with a cost far greater than anyone imagined.
Now, Combs has long denied any involvement with 2Pac. He's never been charged. Our question this morning, how believable is Keefe D's Diddy accusation?
And then there were the fans, those who had long celebrated Diddy as the ultimate hustler, the man who turned nothing into everything. But now, doubt began to creep in. What was the true price of that success? Was the icon they admired simply a master manipulator, willing to cross any line to stay on top? Or, as the defense insisted, was he a victim caught in a tangled web of lies and betrayal spiraling beyond control? The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in the middle. But one thing stood undeniable: this trial was reshaping the story of an entire era. With each passing day, the stakes soared higher. The prosecution teased explosive revelations yet to come, clues that might link Diddy to other shadowy incidents long whispered about behind closed doors. Meanwhile, The defense fought fiercely to tear down Keefe D's credibility, branding him a desperate liar with everything to gain and nothing to lose. No matter how it all ends, one reality remains. The world of hip-hop will never be the same again.
They saw evidence in the case. They immediately honed in on racketeering, and they started saying, why is this racketeering with one guy? And they're charging this one guy. They had a real problem with that. They did not have a problem with the Mann Act. They found him guilty on the Mann Act. And they hung 6 to 6 on racketeering.
As the courtroom drama unfolded, the world held its breath. This was never just a trial, it was a reckoning for an entire industry. The question wasn't simply about guilt or innocence, it was about whether the long-buried truth would finally see the light of day. And if it did, what would it mean for the legacy of one of hip-hop's most legendary figures? But what do you think? Is this the beginning of the end for Diddy, or just another bold chapter in his larger-than-life saga? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, this story is far from over. Stay tuned.